Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Unfounded Podcast. I am Chris Turner. I am your host, and I'm glad to have you back on a day later. Today is July 22nd, 2022, and I hope you enjoyed yesterday's episode. The idea of love and control is an interesting concept, and even though it seemed like we kind of got off target there for a little while when we went down the rabbit hole, speaking of Nietzsche and the evolution of the human experience, it really did tie back together well at the end in terms of releasing control, in terms of letting go of the idea that we need to do something externally to fix the world, right? Something like that. So, hope you enjoyed it, but I want to kind of keep going on that. I talked a little bit yesterday about, and in the previous episode, about morality. And we kind of keyed on it a little bit talking about Nietzsche, but I wanted to dive a little bit into morality, the idea of morality, and I want to pull it apart and kind of see what's unfounded inside of morality itself, the way we conceive of morality. I don't believe I've come to the conclusion just off the bat, and I'll obviously get into explaining this, but I've come to the conclusion over the last couple of years that morality and the way that we conceive of it in the modern world doesn't exist. Truly. Now, on the surface, that might seem kind of crazy, but we'll get into it, right? That being said, I digress. Let's get into our reading for the day. I'm going to go ahead and pull a page or two out of the Buddha book like we have been doing. The Sayings of the Buddha, Reflections for Every Day by William Ray. I'm going to go ahead and intuitively pick 2 pages here. Give me a couple seconds. What do we need to see? Okay. Looks like today we have page 76 and page 77. Page 76. Him the unprovocable. Him the unclouded mind. Freed of all lustfulness, void of all indolence, guide of those on the brink, is master of birth and death. Him the unprovocable, him the unclouded mind, freed of all lustfulness, void of all indolence, guide of those on the brink, is master of birth and death. So this speaks of being something that's constant, right? Being unprovocable, unclouded, having an unclouded mind, and free from lustfulness. So this speaks of what we were talking about yesterday, of being free of actually the need to control, and then also free of the things externally that would control you. It's an odd dynamic, right? As you let go of feeling like you need to control things, the things externally that you feel like you're controlled by go away. It's interesting, right? The world is a reflection of you. But as we get through this kind of illusion of control, we start to realize that we are the masters of our own fate, right? Moving on to page 77. This one goes, "These are my sons. This is my wealth. In this way, the fool troubles himself. He is not the owner of himself. How much less of his sons and his wealth?" That one's confusing. Let me read it again. "These are my sons. This is my wealth. In this way, the fool troubles himself. He is not the owner of himself. How much less of his sons and his wealth?" Okay, I think I got it the second time. I don't know if you guys did, right? But from what I'm getting from that is the first 2 lines are a statement. The fool they're referring to is saying, "These are my sons and this is my wealth. These are the things that I have. This is me." The sons are representations of the fool. The money, the things, the house, the car, all the things. The things. These are me. And this says the fool troubles himself, causes himself problems because he doesn't own himself. And because you don't own yourself, you don't own anything else. We are not finite beings. The world isn't finite and the universe isn't finite, so there's no way in which we can own something like that. This is mine, even me. Because where did you come from? Where did you come from? Do you know? And if you don't know what you are, then how could you really own yourself or your experience? So, these were interesting, a little different to start off the day here. I'm going to go ahead and pull a oracle card for us. We didn't do an oracle card yesterday, so let's do an oracle card today and see what we get. Angels, ancestors, and guides, please be with me now. Guide me to the cards that we need to see, the advice we need to hear. Bear with me, guys. I'm just shuffling, seeing if I can find a card. Seeing which card wants to pop out. Interesting. The card we have for today, the oracle card we have from Angels and Ancestors Oracle Cards, is the card of the Sage, interestingly enough, which, for those of you who have been listening to my podcast for some time, I have picked Sage as a pseudonym of mine to go by when I'm doing things like tarot and spiritual work. But this is the card of the Sage. The Sage is a term that was used to describe spiritual masters of the past. Philosophers tended to describe other philosophers, past philosophers, as the sages, right? So thinkers, people that are connected high to the divine and deliver messages, kind of intermediaries between the 5D and the 3D kind of a thing. This card is beautiful. It has an older gentleman dressed in kind of what looks like Indian garb, with a long beard, and he's riding on a leaf with a peacock feather. And he's sitting under a tree, similar to the card that we saw yesterday, the Four of Cups. Except in this one, on his face, there's a look of peace and happiness and contentment. And he's looking right at you, kind of in a way like tempting you to ask, what are you writing? Content working on whatever it is he's working on. The card says Sage, be devoted and committed. Right, so he's writing on a leaf, which the leaf would usually represents the earth and the physical world, right? So the way I'm seeing it is that this is representative of being devoted and committed to the things that you've established in this world that you care about. Delivering the messages that are true to you, right? Sages take things that are from the spiritual world and they translate them into the physical, literally through speech, kind of like what I'm doing right now, right? So before me speaking right now, there was no message to be heard. You have to be devoted and committed to yourself, your internal dialogue, and your belief in yourself and your aspirations so that you can translate whatever it is that you're getting in the 5D or in the dream world or, the higher realms into the physical world. And the way you do that is literally through speaking it into being. Language is exceedingly powerful. It's magic. Language is magic. And Jordan Peterson talks about this. But one of the best ways you can start to actualize yourself and change your life is to start speaking to yourself properly, out loud. Right? Be kind to yourself. Allow yourself to make mistakes. This card also speaks of maintaining a certain type of peace and calm and silence. Right. Yesterday and the day before, all of these cards have been speaking about regeneration, rejuvenation, right? Renewal. So this is a time to be connecting to the higher realms. If you're joining me every day here, then we're going on a journey together. And we're being guided together to connect to the same energy. It's not different. What you connect to is not going to be different than what I connect to. We all go to the same place when we simplify, when we meditate. Right. It's interesting. Once you start to do spiritual work, you'll find that you'll have a lot more synchronicity in your life, where people say things that you were just thinking about, or numbers pop up that are referencing things that you were just thinking about, or you have deja vu more often, things like this. And the reason I think that happens isn't, for a lot of the stereotypical, there's not an easy way to describe it except for that we're tuning into the same thing. The other day I was talking to a friend on the phone. Hadn't talked to this friend in probably 3 years, or 2 years, maybe 2 years, a couple of years. And he's been going through similar kind of developments, spiritual developments for the last couple of years. And so called each other up and kind of started to get caught up. And we're talking on the phone, and it's not going to seem as relevant to you guys because it's an anecdote of my life. But the figure of Peter Pan has always been, especially recently, very significant to me, important to me. Something like a representation of my the way I view my higher self, right? When I try to picture myself in the higher realm without all of the complications of the physical world, like I feel internally like a Peter Pan type figure, like a very childlike figure that kind of wants to spread the joy and love that he feels inside. Doesn't want to grow up in a way. Why should we grow up? And sorry for the phone going off there in the background if you can hear that. But because it was so special to me, I didn't expect when I was talking on the phone to my friend for him to bring up Peter Pan in a context of spirituality. We were talking about a specific thing, and then all of a sudden he's like, he literally told me effectively, "Hey Chris, he brought up Peter Pan in the context of me without me saying anything." And it was one of those moments where I was like hit, like, what the hell? I told him, I was like, dude, you're keying on something right here, because this is very significant to me, important to me, especially recently. And I think the way that stuff happens is through what I was talking about, through like the simplification. When you go inward, it does get simpler. And I do think that there is a general message that is out there that you can tap into, that, if you look at spiritual beings throughout the world, if you tune into tarot readers, or maybe you listen to, you go to a Reiki healer, or whatever it is, you go into the spiritual world, you'll see that they're all tuning into a similar message at the same time. And that message adjusts over time, right? So, anyway, this speaks to a certain divine quality. So Sage is the energy, the oracle card that we're dealing with today. So sit on that. The Sage would have you sit on that, have you chew on that idea, whatever idea it is you're going over in your head, whatever stress you have, maybe it is whatever idea you've been having for a while that you've been holding in your head. It might be a good day to kind of journal or get it out, make it real in some way, speak it out into being. Even if it's as simple as like you've been wanting to do something and you say out loud, like, yeah, I want to do this, instead of just constantly imagining it in your head or daydreaming, just saying, I'm going to do this. Today I'm going to do this. Or today I'm going to start the process of doing this. You're alchemizing, you're performing a certain type of magic and manifestation by speaking it into being, right? It's kind of what the wand represents in the tarot. The wands, or like in Harry Potter, right? You see the wand is the thing that casts the magic, right? Your language and your perception is kind of the thing that acts as a wand. Your attention and where you direct your energy. And that's why when you see people flip a wand, they say abracadabra, That word is very powerful. People use it in a joking manner, but the word abracadabra is a magic word. It's been used as such throughout history. Just like amen and shalom. Namaste. I'm going to pull a tarot card here. Sorry, guys. I'm in a very calm state right now. That card hit me pretty intensely. So let's go ahead and pull a tarot card or two for you as well. What tarot cards do we need to see today? What more guidance do we need? Angels, ancestors, God. What energies are we going to be dealing with today? What guidance do we need? Okay. All right, so we have two cards today, two tarot cards. This is from the Angel Wisdom Tarot deck by Radley Valentine. Again, these decks, I have them included, the names and the authors in the show description, and they're available on Amazon if you'd like to purchase them on Amazon. Really beautiful decks. I love them. Especially this Angel Wisdom deck. It has all the description. It's really easy if you want to learn. It kind of helps you learn the cards and their meanings. So we've got two cards here. We have the Prince of Fire, the Prince of Wands, and we have the Two of Swords. So the Prince of Wands, the Prince of Fire. Fire is like a passionate element, right? It represents the passions, and so do the wands, right? I was just talking about wands as being a manifester, right? The thing that manifests. So it's the thing that directs your energy, right? And in this picture, it has a young man, kind of looks like a young teenager, holding a big staff with fire, a staff that's on fire on top. And behind him is a dragon, a magic dragon with wings, and it's like his companion, right? And they're standing under a tree, and this tree seems to be significant. Every card we pull, guys, in the last couple of days, we're getting a tree. Everything's happening under a tree. What does the tree represent? Let's look that up. What does a tree represent spiritually? Is there something there? What does... Well, I know it represents life to some degree. Represent spiritually. Curious. Let's see what we got here. But I know that the tree, like the tree of life, is representative of the higher and the lower realms connected, kind of like the tree, the as above, so below concept. And then also just life in general, like the symbiotic process of life. That's how I've always interpreted the tree. But here, just on a quick Google search, it says the ancient symbol of the tree has been found to represent physical and spiritual nourishment, transformation and liberation, union and fertility. Often seen as a symbol of femininity due to its long branches and flowing leaves, the trunk is seen as masculine. Okay, so the leaves are seen as the more feminine aspect, and the trunk is more masculine. But this seems like it fits in nicely with what we've been picking up energetically, right? That this is a time of nourishment and transformation, liberation from the old ideas, right? What cards did we pull a couple of days ago? Regeneration. It was essentially a death card. Release. That's what that liberation is, right? But in that liberation there's a nourishing of the new, a birthing of the new, and that's what this card speaks of to some degree. But it also speaks of having enthusiasm in those passions, being enthusiastic, optimistic, creative, impatient to some degree, and expecting news of exciting opportunities. So you may have been feeling a little stagnant lately, or we have been in kind of this autumn season, right? And maybe you're feeling that the slowness or kind of the lack of opportunities may be keeping you down, or feeling like there's nothing to focus on to pull you out of the place you're in. But this card speaks of there being new opportunities in front of you today, or whenever you're listening to this, right? That there's going to be a new opportunity presenting itself soon, and that it'll allow you to become more creative. It'll allow you to express yourself creatively, kind of manifest something that you've been desiring for a while. And this process will be kind of, this will help you fuel those passions. So as you create something that's passionate, as you create something that's you, uniquely you, you'll develop a bigger fire inside to create more of that, more things that are you, right? So the only advice that this card would speak of is to finish that process. If you feel passionate about something, bring it home, right? And then the other card we have today is the Two of Swords, which the Two of Swords usually represents swords in this deck is it's representative of the mind, right? Of thoughts, and it's interesting because the Two of Swords on this card, it has a woman. She's standing in front of water, which water usually represents emotions, but the water's at her back. She's not looking at the water. So this speaks of possibly being a little shut down to your emotions, or not wanting to tap into the emotional side of yourself. And she's holding two swords in front of her, crossed, right, forming an X. And there's this feeling when you look at the card that she's stuck. Right, she's at a crossroads. This card kind of represents crossroads, literally with an X, visually signifying it. And so the Two of Swords on the card says being unable or unwilling to make a decision. Follow your own heart rather than trying to make others happy and pretending there is no problem or overanalyzing a situation. So the way that this card's usually described to me, the way I usually interpret it for other people is as it said, like in order for you to recognize that you're not trapped, you'd have to be able to look from a different perspective than what you're looking through right now, right? The Two of Swords generally talks about feeling trapped but not being trapped, right? It's just a process of being presented a decision. Sometimes when you're presented a decision, the decision makes you feel like you're being... if you don't want to make the decision, you'll feel trapped because you can't go forward unless you make it, right? It's kind of like pay the toll or you don't get to go by. So when you don't pay the toll of like making the decision, you get stuck at the crossroads, you know what I mean? And then you'll start to feel slowly like you're degrading or like you're not going anywhere or you're stagnating. So this card speaks of it's time to make a decision, right? And when you combine these two together, when I take the Prince of Fire, the Prince of Wands, and I take the Two of Swords together, then it'd mean it's time to make a decision in regards to what you've been passionate about, what you've been ignoring that would fulfill you emotionally. This woman is looking away from the water, away from her emotions, whereas the young man is holding his wand and ready to cast that passion out into the world, right? So in order to do that, you have to recognize you have emotion to draw on to cast that out, right? So you have to turn around and look at the water. Embrace the emotions so that you can make the choice that you want to make, right? You already know what choice you want to make. You just have to be not scared to make it, right? Not scared to go out into the world and grab it. There's going to be risk with anything you do, any endeavor, especially when you do something that is deeply vulnerable, that is representative of you as an individual, as a person. Just kind of like what I'm doing here. It's a very vulnerable and it's a scary process. I get nervous every time before I come onto this podcast because, not necessarily because I don't want to be criticized in some way. It's more of I don't want to be misunderstood, right? I don't want what I'm making to be misunderstood and then devalued. So I think that there might be something in that you're struggling with, whatever your dream is. Maybe you're scared of the same thing. Maybe you're scared of something similar, of either being misunderstood or it not being received properly, or maybe you have fears of not being good enough to actually create it. And all of these cards are speaking of, these three cards we have today are encouraging you that you do have all the tools you need to manifest whatever passion it is that you're trying to, whatever project you're trying to get off the ground, you have the ability to. And all you really need to do is be devoted and committed to yourself. It is a self-love message. Be devoted and committed to yourself. And that'll lead you exactly where you need to be. That'll be the roadmap. That'll give you the energy to cast your wand. Okay, so that's what I got for you today in the tarot. I hope that was helpful for you. Oh, interesting. The bottom of the deck today. Sometimes I look at the bottom of the deck just to get more context. Is the same card as yesterday. It's the Four of Cups. So you might be some of that energy might be lingering today. That's some of the energy to overcome. Okay. Don't let yourself feel down. There's things to be grateful for. Recognize the things that you're grateful for. As soon as you notice your perception shifting to negativity, just use that as an opportunity to identify one other thing that is positive, that you're proud of, that you're grateful for. It'll help balance out that energy so that you can be in a receptive place, especially if you're trying to channel, right? If you're trying to take something from the 5D or the higher realms into The 3D, you're going to need to be in a space where you can hear. You got to trust yourself for that. So, all right. Well, let's go on and move on to the topic today, guys. Like I said, today I wanted to talk about morality, or at least I think this might be one that goes on for a couple episodes. We'll see, I guess. But morality is a big topic, and it's something that I've, like I said, my viewpoint on morality is actually kind of radical, I think, at this point. So I want to make sure that I explain myself properly. But to start us off, let's go ahead and try to define it, right? Let's go to Wikipedia and define morality and get that as a starting off point. Wikipedia. I hope you don't mind that there's some breaks in the podcast as I'm searching for things and stuff. I like to do that live because I feel like it lends the show more credibility. You can hear that I'm not doing this or preparing, and I think that allows synchronicity to happen. If I just went in and tried to control everything, like I was saying yesterday, and like at 5:55, I'm going to do this, and at this section, and it's going to be 5 minutes, and if I do this, if you do all that, there's no room for the divine to come through. You're making it something. You're not co-creating with them. So, morality from Wikipedia. Again, these are always included in the show notes if you want to look at them for yourself. Let's see. Morality from Latin moralitas, manner, character, or proper behavior. Let's define that. That's why we should go to the root word. Moralitas. Noun. Moralitas. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to figure out if this has a different definition or if it is just... doesn't look like it. Okay, so morality is the differentiation of intentions, decisions, and actions between those that are distinguished as proper or right and those that are improper or wrong. Morality can be a body of standards or principles derived from a code of conduct, from a particular philosophy, religion, or culture. Or it can derive from a standard that a person believes should be universal. Morality may also be specifically synonymous with goodness or rightness. In moral philosophy, it includes metaethics, which studies abstract issues such as moral ontology and moral epistemology, and normative ethics, which studies more concrete systems of moral decision-making such as deontological ethics and consequentialism. An example of normative ethical philosophy is the Golden Rule, which states one should treat others as one should like others to treat oneself. Immorality is the active opposition to morality, opposition to that which is good or right, while amorality is variously defined as an unawareness of, indifference towards, or disbelief in any particular set of moral standards or principles. So let's go to amorality, because I think that kind of fits similarly to what I'm kind of talking about, but not exactly. Amorality is an absence of indifference or indifference towards, disregard for, or incapacity for morality. So not exactly what I'm talking about. Some simply refer to it as a case of not being moral or immoral. Amoral should not be confused with immoral, which refers to an agent doing or thinking something they know or believe to be wrong. Morality and amorality in humans and other animals is a subject of dispute amongst scientists and philosophers. If morality is intrinsic to humanity, then amoral human beings either do not exist or are only deficiently human. Interesting, right? Yeah, what do you do with the people that don't operate morally? If you assert that morality is a fundamental human characteristic. A condition sometimes described as moral idiocy or antisocial behavior disorder. On the other hand, if morality is extrinsic to humanity, then amoral human beings can both exist and be fully human, and as such be amoral by default. Human capabilities may be thought of as immoral in that they can be used for either constructive or destructive purposes, i.e. for good or ill. So this is kind of where I'm getting it. We've taken observations from the world, just like we did with the gods. We've looked at the world and we've seen that it has these this dualistic nature. It has the capacity for order and it has the capacity for chaos, right? That within nature itself, you see the balance between order and chaos, a good example is kind of looking at the difference between like a park that's man-made and then looking at like, Yosemite, right? Within the park that's man-made, you see the order, but you don't see as much of the chaos, right? And there's still a beauty in a park that we've made ourselves, humans have made, but it doesn't match even close. It doesn't even come close to Yosemite or the Grand Canyon, right? And the reason for that is because we don't have the capacity yet as human beings. I don't think because maybe of morality. We don't understand that relationship between chaos and order. Because we've defined good and bad, we've associated kind of the destruction of things, the falling apart of things, entropy itself, with something like a bad experience, a negative feeling, a low vibration. It's a low vibration, so we associate it with bad feeling. But just because something feels bad, it doesn't mean it's intrinsically bad, right? So that as we noticed that nature wasn't nice, we started to try to reason our way into a way that we started to try to reason a way to make it nice, to make its only order. Take the chaos away. Take the destruction away, You see this in it's still the plea and the plight of human beings everywhere, Get rid of the suffering. I was listening to Rogan the other day and they were talking about that Instagram. There's an Instagram account called Nature is Metal. And it's really brutal. I don't know if I'd recommend going and looking at it because I don't really like looking at it myself. It's like really intense. It's all stuff like showing you that nature isn't this soft, nice thing. You have a lot of environmentalists or, people like tree hugger types, I guess you could call it, which I guess I'm somewhat one of them. But a lot of people that get into this kind of, into the spiritual world, they'll tend to go really far with it, where you get this love feeling, you tap into the feeling of love, and then you start to forget why there's anything other than that. You know what I mean? So you try to eliminate the other stuff and try to describe how the other stuff shouldn't be there. Or a lot of times it roots to our traumas, what we've experienced in our past as children that made us feel like those things were so intrinsically bad they shouldn't exist anymore. There's a lot of things that you could identify as that. This world is filled with the low vibration stuff too. But it hasn't served us well identifying low vibration is bad and high vibration is good. It's actually caused us in many ways to misinterpret ourselves individually at an individual level, and then to misinterpret the entirety of existence. It's a real big problem. If morality doesn't exist at a fundamental level, if it isn't intrinsic to human beings or nature itself, if it is something that we created, if it's an idea, then if we assume that it is a natural law and try to implement it as such, try to implement anything, we'll mess this whole dynamic up. We'll mess the whole system up. We'll infight. We'll kill each other. We'll label each other as bad things. Evil. You watch Star Wars. I've talked about this before. Take Star Wars. It's one of my favorite movies. Stories in general, mainly because it has this hero and villain dynamic built into it with Luke Skywalker and Anakin Skywalker, and how Anakin is, always seen as the chosen one in episode 1, 2, and then in episode 3 you see him turn and twist based on the experience he has in the world, the low vibration experience. He's being trained in the Force. He's being trained in love and using the power of light and love to kind of as a protector, as a defender. And in that process, there's something that isn't properly seated in him, where he doesn't understand the necessity or the inability that Anakin doesn't understand that because he acts rightly and because he is or feels has assigned himself the good label, he believes that this would keep him from experiencing low vibration or the things that we've labeled as bad in this world. Because I do good, I deserve to receive only good. So what happens when the natural chaos of the world that's built into it just seeps into your world for a second or knocks on your doorstep one morning? Because it will, eventually. You know this intrinsically because you have good and bad days. And you know on the bad days, there's very little that you feel like you're in control of except for the way that you react to it. So the chaos is at your doorstep either way. Right? Now, by us telling ourselves, and Anakin telling himself that I am a light being, I am a light worker, I am a Jedi, I'm the good guy. I'm the good guy. Made himself believe that he was somehow safe from being the bad guy. Couldn't be the bad guy. I'm already the good guy. And then in walks chaos. And takes away something that he loves. If I remember right, the main bad guy, I forget what his name is, the senator dude, lies to him and tells him that Padme is his wife and his pregnant wife was killed, but she wasn't. I think he lies to her. Something happens. Anyway, the low vibration enters his life. The chaos enters his life. And once it does, he loses control because the idea of fairness creeps in. I've done everything right. I've been the defender. I've been the protector. I've been the light for other people. And this is what I get? Life's not fair. If you want proof of that, look at the life of Jesus. If you think you do good, you get good, look at the life of Jesus. It's one of the biggest lessons in that story. Because you do good does not mean you get treated well. It actually means the opposite a lot of the time. Unfortunately. It's a hard pill to swallow. When you do good, when you act in a high vibration, you attract low vibration. It's like a picture, one of those bug zappers with the light and moths flying to the light. Zit, 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 zit. Every time it zits, it doesn't feel good. That's chaos entering your life. You're still the light. It doesn't keep the moths from coming around, kind of a thing, right? So there's this way in which you have to be a strong, open-eyed thing. Something that isn't just good in the way we define good. Isn't just high vibration because it leaves you weak. Something that recognizes that it is both. Can be both at any time. Because Anakin didn't recognize he could be Darth Vader, he became Darth Vader. So that what you watch in the rest of the story of Star Wars in episode 3, 4, and 5, which is the original ones, right? You see Luke, who is his son, who is, the baby of Padme, that, who ends up surviving, and he ends up kind of coming up as another chosen one and fighting against Vader. And there's this whole, huge dynamic of Luke, I am your father, and this recognition that they're attached, that the greatest evil in the universe, as Luke sees it, is actually him, is part of him. He came from the greatest evil in the universe, and he's supposed to save it. What? How does that work? Right? And at the very end of the movie, Vader sacrifices himself to save Luke. Luke is about to die. Emperor Palpatine, that's the name of the guy that lies. Emperor Palpatine is killing him with the lightning, and Vader is laying there, and Vader can't stand to see his child. Love is what saves Luke. Vader is as far gone as he could possibly be. Anakin hasn't been a thing for years. He's been mutilated. He's been hidden. He's done things that he could never come back from. But still, when it came down to it, love shone through. And in the end, Anakin is the savior of that story. Luke doesn't do anything. Darth Vader's the hero of Star Wars. Darth Vader is the one that, saves Luke and defeats Palpatine, or enables Palpatine to be defeated, right? So, what does that mean? Well, I think it means in order for us to properly embody, to be what we should be, we need to understand that there's that Darth Vader and there's that Luke inside of all of us. There's Anakin and a Luke inside of all of us. The hero becomes the villain, and the villain becomes the hero. It is the hero story, the true hero story, not the one that Disney usually shows you, right? The hero, and I guess that's not true. In most Disney stories, you'll see the hero goes through a dark night of the soul, usually. There's this, every hero story has kind of this going away from themselves so that they can come back stronger, regaining the strength. The Lion King is a good example of this, right? Simba, running away, being lied to, similar to what happened to Anakin, right? Scar murders Mufasa and then lies to Simba and says that you killed your father, run away, never come back. And so he does. Right? He runs away from himself. He runs away from the bad thing, the negative vibration. But if he would sit in that, he'd recognize that he isn't the enemy. He wasn't the thing that killed his father. Even if he took what Scar said as true, and Scar was lying, he still wasn't responsible for Mufasa's death. But he allowed the fear of being responsible for Mufasa's death to push him away, to make him into something else. And it turns him away from his true being, his true calling. He turns into this kind of lazy thing. Hakuna Matata. Right? And he's supposed to be a king. And he's doing nothing but laying around eating bugs, singing. That's when Nala comes in and says, hey dude, wake the fuck up. You're a king. How does that happen? How does the waking up happen? Through love. It's powerful, folks. There's a lot of examples of it. Good and bad doesn't exist. Nietzsche is the person that I first learned this from. Let me find a quote from him. I guess Nietzsche's really close. He must be one of the set of masters around right now, guys. Quote from Nietzsche on morality. So the first thing that popped up, let's just go to Nietzsche is so harsh, he delivers bombs, man. This is the first one I found. Friedrich Nietzsche. Morality is just a fiction used by the herd of inferior human beings to hold back the few superior men. So, for those of you who don't know, Nietzsche was also used, interpreted inappropriately and used by the Nazis as like kind of a justification for their supermensch or their supermen idea. It was completely and utterly misinterpreted. His work was not about eliminating people and stuff like that. There's some stuff that you could say is questionable. He's from like the 1820s, so he definitely had his issues. You can tell that he had his biases and stuff when you listen to Nietzsche, but the point is that we've lost him at Nietzsche because the Nazis used a lot of his philosophy improperly to justify some of the things they did. Nietzsche got labeled as kind of this very nihilistic, negative character philosophically. And I really genuinely think that Nietzsche is one of the most prophetic figures we've had in history, period. He's somewhat of a Nostradamus more than a philosopher. He's predictive. He's prophetic. But he says, morality is just a fiction used by the herd of inferior human beings to hold back the few superior men. So in that context, he's viewing morality as a way to control people, right? And then if we view it that way, how would that have come to be? Well, where does morality stem from? Where do people generally tend to look to find a moral message in the world? It's usually from religious institutions, right? In the Western world, it's, the Catholic Church. In the modern world, it's the Catholic Church. If we had to define where morality, the modern morality mindset comes from, it comes from Catholicism. From this expansion of Christianity, through the Crusades and all of these things. It took over the world. But you can see in the means through which Christianity expanded that it wasn't motivated out of love. Because something motivated out of love doesn't have to seize anything, doesn't have to control anything, right? It doesn't have to take anything, it just does. It just loves. And so murdering millions of people in order to show them the light of God doesn't make any sense in that context. Which I think most people agree on. But it seems ironic that we take our morality from that institution, the institution that spread itself through being immoral. So then what is morality? If the source of morality itself is immoral, not amoral, immoral, goes against its own rules, then what's the purpose of morality? Am I just supposed to abide by morality, or is that for you too? Right? Is that for you too? It doesn't seem like it. You're fully autonomous. You are a point in time and space. You are a perspective, and you're completely and utterly unique, and you are uncontrollable, literally, by anything else, except if you allow yourself to be controlled by something else. The only way you can be controlled and moved around is if you allow yourself to be. I think we as human beings figured that out at some point. I think we spent a very long time figuring out how to get people to give us that control. Because we tried for so long to kind of escape the ego. And in that, we kind of built it, competed with each other, tried to control each other. We labeled each other as enemies. We warred with each other. We made moral enemies out of the other because the other made moral enemies out of us. We looked at the experience of being, in a confrontation with another group or another person, and the feeling of being hurt by them or having something taken from by them, that all of that low vibration, that chaos, we blame on them intrinsically and say that we don't have the same qualities. Our group isn't doing the same thing, even though you're fundamentally doing the exact same thing. When you're in a war or a fight or whatever you're doing, you're destroying and you're pillaging and you're, low vibrating everywhere. Right? But because it feels bad, because we don't it's that simple misunderstanding of not understanding what feels bad isn't bad inherently. Like there is no bad in that way. It's just a reality of a certain experience, then it'll lead you to believe that, you can, once you place that label that they did this to me, this group or this other person or this external thing did this to me, it made me feel this way, you automatically had given control to something else. How? Because of the sentence you just said. They made me feel this way. They controlled you because you said they did. You gave it away. They made me feel that way. When you label the action then bad because they made me feel this way, you build a whole structure off of it, right? Don't do any of these things because they make people feel bad. And bad is bad. Do good. You can tell exactly what people are going to do then, right? Here's the thing. If you know that people aren't, if you know, like if you were the person that was developing morality, it's not like one person developed it, right? But if you knew that morality wasn't real, but you were going to develop something like a moral law philosophy, you'd recognize that people were going to continue to act in low vibration ways regardless, right? But as soon as you apply the law that says you shouldn't do these things, like take the commandments, for example, don't do these 10 things, well, the people are still going to fundamentally do them, but now all you're doing is having them think about them. You know, it's like I said a couple episodes ago. You don't get somebody to not do something by telling them don't do it. You get somebody to not do something by explaining to them the consequences of what they do. If you do this, this will happen. Make your choice. You give the power to the individual then, and the individual makes its choice. We, because we're so terrified of low vibration period, assume if they're given, if we take away control and morality wasn't there and you gave them the choice, they'd always choose the bad one. Really? Because the reason we developed morality is we didn't want to feel low vibration. So you think you're going to choose to be in low vibration all the time if the reins were taken away? No. You just be whatever you are without the rules. You just be. And the funniest thing is, when you look into the world, the people that preach moral philosophy or morality outward tend to be some of the least pleasant people to be around. Because you can feel this projection happening. There's an identity and an ego that's massive. It can be built, that is built fundamentally on the idea of morality. Here's the good things in the world. Here's the bad things in the world. Go do the good things, don't do the bad things, right? Okay. Well, some people recognize that they should go do more good things, and then also recognize that they're never going to be able to not do bad things completely, so they just, like many people do, many Christians do, ask for forgiveness. You're a sinner. You're born with original sin. You're fallible. You're never going to be perfect, but as you make mistakes, you're forgiven already. Just ask for forgiveness, kind of a thing, right? But then there's this other type that I think, that's the message that's usually spread. But then people, because, at least in Catholicism, there's this idea of confessing your sins to somebody or like sharing that. It's not done in general. It's done through prayers and internally, right? Ask for forgiveness. If you do it in Catholicism, you do it in front of a priest, but it's a personal kind of place. It's not, you don't share it with a group. You don't say, hey, this is what I'm insecure about. This is what I did yesterday, and it made me feel really bad. Has anybody else ever done that? Everybody raises their hand. You're like, oh, shit. Okay, I'm not alone. Yeah, all right. That's the forgiveness. What, you think going into a box and telling somebody, I did this really, really bad thing. How can I get something outside of me to forgive me? And he says, go say a bunch of words that we said many, 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 many times for thousands of years and do it over and over and over again and make sure you're really, really sorry inside. Say, okay, thank you. You're forgiven. No, you're not. Because you still think like you're abnormal. You still think that everybody else in that church hasn't done the same thing you did because you didn't have the conversation with them. There was no dialogue. There's this assumption that you're supposed to be good, not bad, so don't say the bad things. People that preach to you morally, it's painful to be around those kind of people, and the reason is because they're some of the biggest hypocrites in the world. You can sense it. You don't have to tell somebody to do good. And as soon as you try to tell me to do something good like that, that I should be doing something better than what I'm doing right now, it tells me everything I need to know about you. Right? I don't think that having I had this realization. I'll kind of explain what happened. I was going through my dark night of the soul, and I was felt really alone, and I was going through this kind of panic and that loneliness feeling, and I was screaming out to God, begging, praying, screaming for relief from whatever I was feeling. And I finally got to a point where I was fed up, and I just said, I don't believe in you anymore. I don't believe in you anymore. I'm done. I'm done praying to you. I'm done asking for help. I'm done pretending that you're listening because you never answer. And when I said that, it got so still. I noticed that I had a certain type of chaos inside of my head for a really long time. These voices that would go around and around. This constant anxiety about whether I had done something wrong, whether I had, was just a fundamentally flawed person, whether I had been born wrong, And for some reason, when I said that, those fears went away. The noise went away. And I remember laying on the bed, it was a really vivid experience, and feeling this calm and wondering what I had just done, but not panicking. Not like, oh God, did I just deny God? Is God going away now? It was the opposite feeling. I actually, oddly enough, felt like for the first time in my life, I connected to God. By doing that. And how would that happen? It was the first time that I realized what Nietzsche talked about yesterday, that God really isn't external to you. I had been talking to God outside of myself. I had labeled myself as a morally bad thing. And because of that, I was begging that external thing, just, why did you do this to me? Why? Why did you move the whole world against me? Why did you make me feel this way? Why would you make a thing as horrible as me? And it was all an illusion based on a lie that is morality. That is meant to keep you thinking that God is outside of you, so that you constantly give your power to something outside of you. If I make you feel insecure about the things that you think about inside of your head, by telling you shouldn't think about those things, I take your power away from you. In order for you to be who you need to be confident in what you are and speak whatever it is that comes into your mind. Because you are God, and that's God speaking. Every time somebody opens their mouth, it's God speaking. But when we tell people that they need to filter what happens inside of their head, that they need to control themselves and make themselves into something other than what they already are, you're a sinner. You were born with this. Fix yourself. You nasty thing. How dare you try to compare yourself to something like a god? Get on your fucking knees and pray. If that doesn't sound like control, I don't know what is. We just don't use those words so people don't hear it that way. But that's what's happening. Get on your knees. Why would something that's you have you get on your knees for it? We've been lied to. God is real. But God's not out there. And morality does not exist. You don't have to filter and control yourself. The people in your life, the places in your life that have told you you were wrong for this or that, this feeling, that, they're wrong. Because they all feel the same way, and they're liars. If there is a sin, the only one I can see is lying about something like that. The most fundamental sin would be severing somebody else from God. You tell somebody they're immoral, that is exactly what you're doing. Now, you may say, Chris, look at the world. There's all these people that do horrible things. Well, you think that that's okay? Absolutely not. No. I would never want to do those things. I would never want to experience a lot of the stuff that happens to people in this world based on the ways that people take advantage of them, or treat them or mistreat them. There's a lot of low vibration stuff in this world. And it's very hard because of how deeply morality is ingrained for us to not think of it as, it's bad. It's bad. It's horrible. Yes, it is. It is. I get that. It is. Yes. It's not going to change. Not in the way that you're thinking. Go watch Nature is Metal if you really want to prove this point to yourself. The animals aren't nice. Nature's not nice. Is nature moral? You tell me you go watch a monkey tear another monkey apart and eat it alive and not have an ounce of emotion while it's doing it. Just nom, 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 crunching on like heads and fingers and stuff like that while it's screaming. That's the kind of stuff that's on that kind of... You think that is moral. Apply your morality to a monkey. Apply your morality to anything in nature. Anything. Is a snake moral? Is a lion moral? Is a monkey moral? Well, they call us big monkeys. If the monkeys aren't, then what happened to us? Right? What, we somehow think that we didn't come out of nature too? We came from the same thing. Science says, evolution says we all developed from the same point. Right? So the monkeys and the lions and all that, none of these things are moral. The moral law doesn't apply to them, but moral law is universal and applies to all of us? Doesn't make sense. Okay, so let's go fix all the human beings. That won't do shit for the bears and the lions and the tigers. They're still going to eat each other and rip each other apart. Bears will eat their own young. That's why the mama bear has to hide the cubs. Morality doesn't exist. All you have to do is look into nature and recognize you're a part of nature. You are Mother Earth. You know? You come from the earth. So that being said, if we're not moral beings, then what are we? If our purpose here is not to make the world a better place, then what is it? To be or not to be? That's the question, right? The purpose is to be. Or not to be. It's the choice. The purpose is this. The purpose is newness. The purpose is love. The purpose is discovering something you never felt before. The purpose is fear and excitement and loneliness and craving and everything. The purpose is seeing everything with clear eyes. That's experience. That's life. That's why you're here. You know, you were never brought here to save somebody else or save a planet, you know. I like to think of myself that if I go really deep, you know, we'll get into this a little bit later on, but I think of myself as a starseed, it's called, which is, it gets way more into the spiritual side, guys, and I haven't explained a lot of these concepts yet, but we talked about aliens in the context of angels and how I understand these ideas now, but we'll get into it at some point. But I do think that there's some people, some souls that come to spread messages, right? But in that, they're not trying to save anybody. They can't save anybody. They're just bringing something. They're seeding something. You know, they're enunciating a truth. And then people have the ability of noticing truth. It's universal. Truth is universal. You can't deny it once you see it. Real truth, you cannot deny. Nobody can. It's a universal solvent. So you bring the truth to people and you let them see it. You don't do anything. All you have to do is see the truth too. And have the courage to speak it out loud. Right? How do you get novel things, you know? If the way that you do it is speaking it out loud and everybody's talking really loud, everybody's talking a whole shitload, but nothing's new. Where's the novel things at? It's where you're not looking. It's in the bad stuff. The evil stuff. The shit you need to forgive yourself for. That's where the secrets of the universe are hidden. That's where the newness is. That's where the life that you desire is. It's behind the moral wall that doesn't exist. And with that, folks, that's going to be the Unfounded Podcast for today. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope I did a good job of explaining my ideas on morality and why I don't think it exists. I'm going to listen back to it and be back here. I don't know about tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday. I might come back tomorrow, or I might take a day off. But the next episode, I'll go back over it a little bit and make sure that I've covered it properly, because morality is a big topic and it's confusing and it's scary also at a fundamental level to try to play with the idea that morality doesn't exist. I mean, it's very scary. It may, especially if you've been raised in the Christian tradition, and it will feel like you're sinning by even playing with the idea. And that's how you'll see how tricky. It's a really tricky, really manipulative process, because it's built and designed to get you to not question it. Right? Here's morality. The only way that you can, one of the fundamental ways, it's the Fight Club thing. First rule of Fight Club is don't talk about Fight Club. You know what I mean? Something like that. So, first rule of moralizing is don't say anything that's immoral. First law of moralizing is don't question morality itself. What do you think you are, God? You're going to hell. Easy. So, anyway, that being said, that seems like a good note to leave it on for some reason. I hope you enjoyed it, everybody, and I hope you're doing well out there. It's been really nice to be back on here and getting some episodes continuously popped out. So, lots of love, everybody, and go out there and live your best life, okay? Don't be afraid of the world. Morality keeps you afraid in a way. Don't be afraid of the world. Live your life. You don't need to control yourself. You are, in the way we define good, you're good already. Just by being. Bye-bye.